Hello students, today we learn methods based on molecular rotation difference. This method is similar to optical superposition. It has been developed by Barton and Klein in 1948 for a large number of data available in steroid field. According to this rule, the molecular rotation of a steroid or a polyterpenoid may be described as sum of the contribution made by the parent hydrocarbon. Example: cholesterol, androstenedione, pregnane, etc. and the contribution made by any other functional group or groups which includes double bond which are present in the molecule. The parent hydrocarbons such as cholesterol, androstenedione and pregnane have molecular rotation values 91, 5 and 52 degree respectively in 5 alpha series and 97 plus 11 and 58 respectively in 5 beta series. The shift in molecular rotation due to a substituent is known as the delta values, which depends on the position and the orientation of the substituent. So in this method, we are going to consider the molecular rotation as a sum of the molecular rotations of the parent steroid including that of the substituent. For example, if there is any double bond or any other functional group like hydroxyl or amine or any other functional group, we are going to add both the molecular rotation values and we are going to take the sum of the values. So this was given by Mills. Thus delta values for 6 alpha hydroxyl and 6 beta hydroxyl are plus 55 and minus 50 degree respectively, which means that 6 alpha hydroxycholesterol and 6 beta hydroxycholesterol would have molecular rotations of plus 91 plus 55 and plus 91 minus 55 respectively. So what we are doing is plus 91 we know is the molecular rotation of the parent cholesterol, and as I already told, we are taken a substituent, that is an hydroxyl group is being added. So here, and this delta value for the hydroxyl is 55. So hence, as I already told, according to Mills theory, we have to add the molecular rotations of the parent steroid and also that of the substituent group which has been added. So that is why we are going to add plus 95 and plus 55, and for that of 6 beta would be plus 95 minus 50. So that is how we are going to give the molecular rotation values. Now this can be used in an application. Application of this rule is illustrated by the determination of the position of the double bond in cholesterol formed by dehydrohalogenation of 3-chlorocholesterol. The double bond would be either between C2 and C3 or between C3 and C4. The molecular rotation of the actual product is plus 248. So now here we know see here this is the double bond between carbon 2 and carbon 3, and this is the double bond which is formed between carbon 3 and carbon 4. So now, and we want to assign the structure. So how would we do is, we already know that is the actual product, the molecular rotation of the actual product, that is 248. And also it has been observed that the delta values at 2, 3 where there is a double bond between 2 and 3 carbon is plus 152, and that between 3 and 4 is plus 123. So now what we would do is, we would subtract the values of the actual product from the delta 2, 3 and 3, 4, and we would come to know whether the double bond is existing between 2, 3 or between 3, 4. Now on this mathematical representation, once we do that, so we can observe that plus 248 minus 152 would give us plus 91, or in other words you can say that the parent cholesterol, that is a steroid, parent steroid delta value is, that is molecular rotation value is plus 91, and that of delta value of double bond between 2 and 3 is 152. So we add 91 and 152, we would get 243 as our answer. So that means to say that the double bond was present between 2 and 3 for the value of 248 to be obtained as an actual product. So this is how we can assign, or we can do the structural elucidation also for the steroid molecules using the molecular rotation difference. So this is one technique. Next, moving on to the Mills rule. The Mills rule was proposed by Mills in 1952. He examined the rotations of a few epimeric pairs of terpenoid and steroidal allyl alcohols of known configuration and came out with a rule which is as follows. The more levorotatory epimer has, the configuration corresponding to that of S-glyceraldehyde, and the more dextrorotatory one has, then would have the opposite configuration, and it would be R-glyceraldehyde. So this method can be used to assign any kind of configuration if knowing the absolute configuration. So now if you are going to take the glyceraldehyde as the absolute configuration, that is S and R, we are going to take it as the absolute configuration, and you are going to take the steroid or the terpenoids, and we can assign the configuration based on the absolute configuration. Now suppose, for example, here you have a structure here of a double bond and a hydroxyl group which is similar to that of the proposed or the absolute configuration, and this we know is going to have an S-glyceraldehyde. Now when you have a big terpenoid with a structure of a lot of fused benzene rings, and you have a structure which is similar to that of the parent group here, or a known absolute configuration, then we can compare easily. So that's the reason why the cholestyramine beta 3 all will have an S configuration, because it is similar, or its configuration is matching that of the S-glyceraldehyde. And similarly, when you look at this other structure and you're going to assign it as R, that is a cholestyramine alpha 3 all, you're going to assign it as R because its configuration is similar to that of the R-glyceraldehyde. So this rule was given by the Mills rule. So we are going to take here as the S and the R-glyceraldehyde as the absolute configuration, and we are going to determine the configurations of other steroids and terpenoids on this basis. Next is the method of quasi-racemate. Introduction. A racemic mixture or racemate is one that has equal amounts of left and right-handed enantiomers of a chiral molecule. The first racemic mixture was racemic acid, which Louis Pasteur found to be a mixture of two enantiomeric isomers of tartaric acid. Usually the racemates are denoted by the prefix plus or minus or D or L. Now coming to crystallization. There are 4 ways in which a racemate can be crystallized depending on the substance. First we have conglomerate, which is also called as racemic conglomerate. We have a racemic compound, which is also called as a true racemate. We have pseudo-racemate, that is racemic solid solution, and we have the quasi-racemate. So we will understand one by one. First is conglomerate. If the molecules of a substance have a much greater affinity for the same enantiomer than for the opposite one, a mechanical mixture of enantiomerically pure crystals will result. The melting point of the racemic conglomerate is always lower than that of the pure enantiomer. In other words, we can say that if the crystal lattices are formed entirely from enantiomers of like chirality, the racemic modification is called a conglomerate. So here in conglomerates, we are always, the crystal is formed with only one type of the enantiomers. That is, all plus would have formed to give rise to a crystal, that also we call as conglomerate, or all the minus forms of a substance would have formed, even that we call it as a conglomerate. Now next, moving on to racemic compound. If each unit crystal contains of an equal amount of plus and minus enantiomer, the racemic form is called a racemic compound. And the third type is pseudo-racemate, when the two enantiomers coexist in an unordered manner in the crystal lattice, and that is what we call as a pseudo-racemate. Addition of a small amount of one enantiomer changes the melting point slightly or not at all. So pseudo-racemate doesn't have a proper proportion of a plus or minus enantiomers. It could be mixed up, so that's why we say it as an unorderly manner. That is what is formed of a pseudo-racemate. So this is the structural representation and the melting points for the 3 groups, that is nothing but the conglomerate and the racemic mixture and also the pseudomerate. So here there is pseudo-racemate. So here the first one you can see that is represented as A. So here what the conglomerate is nothing but it consists of a same kind, that is a crystal consists of the same kind of the plus, same kind of the enantiomer, that is either completely plus or completely minus. So that's what has been represented here. It will have only one kind of a mixture in the crystal, it is either completely plus form or the minus enantiomer. And here when you look at the melting point, you can easily make out that a melting point of this kind, that is a V, elongated V, will have the, represents the melting point of the conglomerate. So here you can see the melting point, that is the peak, you can see is 100% of one kind of enantiomer. Here is 100% one kind of enantiomer, and as it comes down or it descends, you can see that there is going to be a 50% of both the enantiomer, and then again as it increases, the peak would again represent the 100% enantiomer of the another kind, either plus or minus. So that is how we are going to represent the melting point for the conglomerate. Next, moving on to the racemic mixture, you can see here it is going to be equal. That is, it would have, say, 2 molecules of plus enantiomer, it would have 2 molecules of the minus. So this is how the racemic mixture is formed. And here when you look at the melting point, you can see it's kind of a zigzag here. So you can say 2 V's make the kind of a melting point here. And you can see why this is so, because we know it is an equimolar mixture of both the enantiomers. So that's why we are going to get a peak like this. So we have in the middle we have the 50% of the both enantiomers. That's the reason why you are going to get a peak in that point. Next, moving on to the pseudo-racemate. So here what happens is it is not a uniformly formed crystal. It is going to have a plus or minus and different kinds of or different amounts of the plus and the minus enantiomers, and hence here it is not going to have a specific melting point, and you are going to write it in this form like a linear plane. So in which there is, this is how we are going to represent the pseudo-racemate melting point. Next, moving on to the quasi-racemate. A quasi-racemate is a co-crystal of 2 similar but distinct compounds, one of which is left-handed and the other right-handed. Although chemically different, they are sterically similar, which is called as isosteric in nature, and are still able to form a racemic crystalline phase. Example is bis ammonium salt of plus tartaric acid and bis ammonium salt of minus malic acid. So you can say that quasi-racemates are nothing but like similar to a racemic mixture, but here we are going to consider the is a co-crystal of a different compounds. 2 similar, but they are different compounds. For example, another example you can take is chlorosuccinic acid and bromosuccinic acid. So here also they are nothing but a quasi-racemates which are being formed. Next, moving on to the method of quasi-racemate. So in the earlier being mentioned that 2 structurally similar chiral molecules of opposite configuration sometimes form quasi-racemic compounds which can be easily characterized by their mixed melting point. This provides a method of configurational correlation of 2 species which may not be chemically transformed into each other. The method, which was given by Frege in 1941, is very simple and the least time consuming, but in order to succeed requires some condition to be fulfilled. First one is that the compounds to be compared should be chemically very similar. They must not be too small and are usually polar. Both the enantiomers of at least one of the compounds A or B must be available so that one can check whether plus and plus form quasi-racemic mixture or plus and minus form a simple mixture. So now here one example has been taken. A classical correlation achieved by this method is between malic acid and methyl succinic acid. See here, first of all, malic acid, they do not form quasi-racemic compounds themselves, that is malic acid and methyl succinic. So that's the reason why malic acid is first converted to ethyl xanthate, that is this structure. Now ethyl xanthate forms a quasi-racemic with this molecule. So that's the reason why we can say that these two are quasi-racemates. And now this is, that is the structure you can see here. This is quasi-racemate with that of the ethyl xanthate derivative. Okay. Now what happens is these two are the quasi-racemate. Now you can derive now because of this being the quasi-racemates, whatever the derivative or the parent carbon or the parent group with which the ethyl xanthate derivative was derived, even that is going to have the same kind of configuration. So that is how we are going to ascend. So here even this structure will have the same kind of the configuration as that of the ethyl xanthate derivative. So that's the meaning here. The latter is also found to form a quasi-racemate compound with that of this structure. So that's the meaning. And now when you look at this parent group that is formed of that has been formed or that has been derived from the structure here, so even you can compare the malic acid with that of the methyl succinic acid. Now here what you can see here is this is the methyl succinic acid, okay, and this is the malic acid. So finally we can make sure that malic acid and methyl succinic acid are going to have the same, or you can say that these two are quasi-racemate, but you are not going to directly derive this because they cannot be directly interconverted. So what we are going to do is, first we are going to go through this process and then we can finally come to a conclusion that malic acid and the methyl succinic acid are the two quasi-racemates in nature, and their melting points is also mentioned here. So this is how you are going to write on the method for the quasi-racemate, and this is again further explanation for that. Thank you.